of the Thai Chamber of Commerce, UTTC President, University Council, and executive members, special guests from TEPCOP program, ID Academy, representatives from government, business sectors, and public-private partnership committee. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. Welcome everyone to this special event, and a very warm welcome, Mr. Bill Aulet, to our warm family of UTCC. So without further ado, I would like to invite Kun Isara Wangkusongkit, Chairman of the Thai Chamber of Commerce and Chair of the University Council, to deliver an opening speech. Please welcome.
Dr. Prasan Traivat Borakul, former Governor of Bank of Thailand, Mr. คุณเกียรติชัย โสภาเสถียรพงศ์ Vice Minister of Finance, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to University of Thai Chamber of Commerce and this remarkable event, a special lecture titled Entrepreneurship Can Be Taught by Bill Aulet, Managing Director of Martin Trust Center of MIT, Entrepreneurship, and Senior Lecturer at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. Lately in Thailand, entrepreneurship has been attracting substantial attention from both Thai government and private sector as driver for economic growth. A group of public-private partnership collaboration, which join hand by both public and private sector, has spearheaded Thai entrepreneurship by focusing on development of SME and startup entrepreneurs. University of Thai Chamber of Commerce is under the umbrella of an 80 years old history of Thai Chamber of Commerce, which has over 4,000 new generation young entrepreneurs, Chamber of Commerce nationwide. We have foreseen the significance of entrepreneurship in this increasing globalized marketplace. The university presidents and executive, together with relevant Thai stakeholders, join MIT Regional Entrepreneurship Acceleration Program, or what we call REAP program, at MIT during the past 2 years. Deploy the MIT REAP frameworks to leverage ecosystem in Thailand. In addition, the growing number of entrepreneurship education programs and activities have been implemented on campus, including this event. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to sincerely thank our special speaker for accepting our invitation to speak before us today. I am confident that this event will be beneficial to entrepreneurial ecosystem in Thailand and drive the country's prosperity to its highest potential in the region. I would like to welcome Bill Aulet to speak on to our university.
So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, would like to give a round of applause to our speaker today, Mr. Bill Aulet.
I can just use this, right? Thank you very much. So first of all, my condolences about your king. We've seen this in the United States, and for those of you who don't know, he was born in Cambridge, right near where I live, at Mount Auburn Hospital, where I've taken my kids, and there's a memorial to him in Cambridge. So my thoughts go to you. Very tough time, and hopefully you will find another king that can be as good as he was. And I want to thank the chairman very much for having me here, and Sowani, who has just been terrific. She came to MIT, and I didn't realize how important she was, and she was just a student in the class, and I gave her such a hard time. But as the chairman said, she gave me a hard time back, which was good as well. And where's Ed? Is Ed? who have worked with us so much before. So thank you, and everybody else. Yes, and before I get started, I just want to apologize for Donald Trump, and I don't want to talk about him anymore, all right? We're done with that. Hopefully we'll never hear from him again. So, but really what I'm here to talk about is entrepreneurship and why it's so important. And I want to make 3 points here. First of all, there's different types of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has become very popular. I'm going to talk about that. But then I want to point out that there's different types of entrepreneurship. It's like technology. Well, which technology are we talking about? Are we talking about biotechnology? Are we talking about computer technology? Because they're very different. Likewise with entrepreneurship. And the second thing I want to go is really on this point, is entrepreneurship can be taught. And I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship can be taught. And really, that motivated me enormously about 7 years ago when I realized that. And so what we're now looking at is how do you teach it effectively? Because there's a lot of challenges to teaching entrepreneurship. I want to talk about that. But I think we're at a new place that we've never been before, is that there's a basis on which, a body of knowledge, that we can teach entrepreneurship. So those are my 3 goals here today. First, I want to ask a question here. How many of you have been to the United States before? That's about half, it looks like. Did you like it? So yeah, so one of the things that makes America great for, is that it's a place where there's all kinds of opportunities. And by the way, I think, this is my first time here, so I can't jump to great conclusions, but I just came from Vietnam. I think this is a place that embraces the concept of entrepreneurship. It's willingness to be different. It's willingness to take on challenges. So let me just cover the points now. So entrepreneurship is now this very cool, oops, we're losing the images here. What happened to the images? Oh, looks like we lost the images. All right. So entrepreneurship is very, very popular today. As I said in that video, when I graduated from college, nobody wanted to be an entrepreneur. Even when I became an entrepreneur in 1994, when I left IBM, people came up to my mother in my hometown and said, "What happened to Bill? He was such a nice boy. I hear he's unemployed. Can we help him?" That was the United States in 1994. And now today, when I graduated from Harvard, no one wanted to be an entrepreneur. Statistically, no one. I didn't even know what the word was. And now, from places like Harvard, over 20% of the students choose entrepreneurship as something they want to be. Lawyer, doctor, work for a big company, entrepreneur. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as to why that is in a few slides. But first, what is entrepreneurship, right? And I don't think there's sufficient understanding of this topic, especially as I've talked to lots of people about it. They think all entrepreneurs are the same. And what I want to do is differentiate between what you've seen a lot about here is the SME entrepreneur, which is someone who goes and starts a fruit stand, someone who goes and does a shoe store, someone who does a restaurant. These are what we call SMEs. And these are good businesses, but they focus on local demand, a local market. And these are necessary. These are highly service-oriented businesses. On the other hand, this thing we call IDE, or innovation-driven enterprise entrepreneurship. This is, and by the way, I write about this in the book at the beginning. These are a different thing in the sense that they're going after global markets. They're not just trying to sell to a neighborhood in Bangkok. They're not even just trying to sell to Bangkok. They're trying to sell and export products throughout the world. And to do this, you create global markets. And these are things, to do that, you have to have something special in your product. You have to have what we're going to call innovation in it. There has to be something that if you ship it to Boston, they're going to want your special product there. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge. And these businesses over here, SME, they take a shorter time to get going and to start to get revenue because it's a known problem you're solving. It's a known solution to it. All you need to do is just go do it. And what they do is they create this linear growth. They create linear growth. And it doesn't take too much time to do it. That's what delta T is. That means the time to get going is not very long. On the other hand, if you do innovation-driven, it's going to take a while, and you might have to put some cash into it. Why? Because you're going to have to develop some sort of innovation. So it's going to dip down. But when it comes out of this, it's not going to be linear growth. It's going to be exponential growth. And so these things you can think of uncapped. These will employ a bunch of people. Not a lot of people, and they'll pretty much stay small. These can employ, as we were just talking on the TV out there, I have a student now that's employing hundreds and hundreds of people. His business is now growing faster than Amazon was at that point. Those type of businesses transform regions' economies. And you need both of these in an economy. But these are what we want to encourage you to do. This is what I tell my students. This is what you're here for. You come to MIT not to do a fruit stand, but to do one of these. And it's okay if it doesn't succeed the first time. Mine didn't, and it's unlikely yours will. But that's what we're shooting for. And it might take you 2 times. It might take you 3 times to get there. But this is what you should do. This is what we're training you to do. Now, someone will look at these and say, well, is it that different? Well, it's kind of like sports. If you have basketball and you have soccer, they're both sports, but they're fundamentally different. There's both running and jumping. There's something common in them, and they keep score, but there's a different skill set required. And I'm going to focus on developing this skill set. Now, are some of these skill sets applicable here? Absolutely. And I get this all the time. People send me emails, and they send me letters, and they say, you say your book isn't good for it, and it's helped me dramatically. But to do all 24 steps is what we're going to go through. It's really here. There's a lot you can get if you have something like this. And I'm sure some of your parents or friends are doing business like this. There's a lot of value. But I'm really going to focus on how do you do the IDE, because that's what we really need, and that's what I want you to try to shoot for. By the way, if you do something like this, an SME, you make yourself vulnerable to someone who does an IDE. For instance, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we used to have a lot of bookstores. And those bookstores were well run and people did a good job. But what happened was Amazon came along and there are only 2 or 3 bookstores left now, and they don't make very much money. So you always have to be thinking, how can I make the business better? And that's what this is. So now that we have that, let's just talk about briefly why entrepreneurship is so popular, now that we've defined those. So the reason, first and foremost, that governments are so enthusiastic about entrepreneurship comes down to one 4-letter word: jobs. The jobs that are being created in the economy today are created by innovation-driven entrepreneurial companies. There was a study done by the Kauffman Foundation, and between 1980 and 2005, 25 years, they figured out that the US economy created 40 million net new jobs. 40 million net new jobs. Now, where did those jobs come from? Did they come from the government? No, the government didn't create any new jobs. Did they come from the big companies? No, but for every job that Ford created, Chrysler lost a job. For every job that Microsoft created, IBM lost a job. Where did the jobs come from? Did they come from these SMEs? They didn't come from the SMEs. They came from dynamic new startups. That's where the job creation is. And this is why everyone agrees that entrepreneurship is a great thing. Even Hillary Clinton and that person who we cannot mention his name, the one thing they agree on is entrepreneurship is great. David Cameron thinks entrepreneurship is great. Chinese think entrepreneurship is great. Everybody loves entrepreneurship because they realize they have to create jobs. They have to create jobs. So that doesn't explain. Just because the government wants you to do something, that doesn't mean that the people want to do it. And by the way, we have a lot of young people here, which is great to see. And I assume that Thailand is like the United States. if your parents want you to do it, you don't want to do it. Yes? The same everywhere. But why do kids love entrepreneurship? I'll tell you why they love entrepreneurship, because you control your own destiny. I worked at IBM, and IBM at the time, and when I joined, was the best company in the world. And I don't mean to sound like a crazy man, but it was the most respected company in the world, IBM. And I had a job for life. And then in 1993, I left IBM, and I started my own company. And people thought it was crazy and all that. But a friend of mine, Steve, stayed at IBM. And because he didn't want to go outside in the cold and get cold. He didn't want to leave the greenhouse because he wanted to stay warm and be comfortable, because every day. Well, guess what? 10 years later, I had gone out and I'd failed in my first company, but then I had gotten another company going, and I had another company that was going. I controlled my own destiny. And Steve was calling me up saying, can you get me a job? Because when you're working in a big company, you don't control your own destiny. And by the way, why would I go seek a job when I could create exactly the job that I want with the kind of values that I want? And so this is the situation of controlling your own destiny. By the way, if my companies blew up, I didn't care, because I knew you could put me in Bangkok, you could put me in Brisbane, Australia, you could put me anywhere, and I could create my own job. This is a very powerful thing for you all as young people to have. And the other thing is that young people today want to do something that's impactful, that they really believe in. And so how do you do that? You create your own company. So is there some of this? It's really popular amongst young people. It is. But it's not going to go away. This is not a bubble. So this is why, can entrepreneurship be taught? I'm going to first tell you that I didn't believe entrepreneurship could be taught at first. I just thought, like, I was better than other people, you know. That somehow you were born with this and my brothers and sisters weren't. Well, guess what? That's not true, because when you look at the data, it shows that the more times you're an entrepreneur, the more likely you are to be successful. So if we can get you to try entrepreneurship, your odds go up. So you're learning something. There's no question you're learning something. And then and I can see it in my classroom every day. It's not just the aggregate data. And then my own personal experience. I didn't get smarter. My first company did not succeed, or as we call it, it's in deep stealth mode. And I didn't get smarter. What happened was I learned the tricks of the trade as to what you needed to do. And that makes perfect sense when you think about it. So the question isn't, can you learn entrepreneurship? The question is, how do we teach it to learn it? And we have to teach it in a different way than we have. And so, and I'll come back, and we're going to have time for questions at the end, right? Where's the clock? When am I supposed to be done? By 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock? 3:30. Okay, great. All right. So let me just talk about, and I'm going to come back to, because someone will say, you know, but not everyone can be an entrepreneur. And I'd love to hear someone ask that question later, and we'll talk about it. And the other question people say is, Steve Jobs was an entrepreneur, and he never took your class, you know? I love that question. So let's go back to, how do we teach entrepreneurship? All right? So demand is just taking off for entrepreneurship. There's no question about that. There are over 2,000 schools that teach entrepreneurship in the United States alone. Around the world, there's more than that. And so if demand is taking off, shouldn't supply just come and meet it? That's simple economics. That's just market response. Here's the problem, though. It's hard to teach entrepreneurship. It's really hard to teach entrepreneurship. If we wanted to teach everyone in this room math, it's not nearly as hard as teaching entrepreneurship. Why? Because 2 plus 2 equals 4 for everyone in this room. It's the same. If we teach you molecular structures, it's the same for everybody in this room. If we teach you Java programming, it's the same for everybody in this room. But if we teach you entrepreneurship, let's think about this. Someone's going to be doing an e-commerce company. Someone's going to be doing a medical device company. Someone's going to be doing a fashion company. Someone's going to be doing an energy company. What's the same between those things? That's very complicated. And by the way, the whole nature of entrepreneurship, innovation-driven entrepreneurship, is you're doing something that's never been done before. So of course there's no algorithm to do that. You can't do 3 examples of it on page 21 and then give a question on page 22 and then have them redo it again. Because it's new every time. So that means that this is a hard problem to solve. And here's the other thing about it is it has not been a popular field to study. It has not been a popular field. So if you're in a university, do you know what the goal, if you're teaching in a university, is if you're ambitious? It's a thing called tenure. Do you have tenure at yours? Tenure. Yes. So if you want to get tenure, which means you basically have a job for life and being a teacher, what you do is you study data sets and figure out how you can write this brilliant papers about things. You need clean data sets to do that. So if I was an ambitious young academic, I would look for data sets that were very clean and change one variable, and then I could prove something. Where would I do that? I would do that in large companies. I would do that in financial institutions. The last place I would do it would be in entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurial ventures have not clean data sets, and it's very hard to compare them. And the field of entrepreneurship hasn't been popular until recently. And so there's not a lot of academics, and there's not a lot of body of knowledge out there that's respected. There are some people out there, but there's not nearly enough. So what happens here is that you have a difficult subject without a developed body of knowledge like economics or marketing or, do you think of law or medicine? That makes it a big problem. And here's the last part, is it's easy to fake entrepreneurship education. You come in and do a class, and this is what I did at the beginning. Entrepreneurship is like basketball. Just get up early in the morning and try harder than the other team. Choose success. I chose success. Embrace failure. It's good for you. All this kind of rubbish that's not useful at all. What do you do with that? That sounds like what your sports coach yells at you at halftime of a game. We have to be more methodical about how we teach it. And so what's filled this gap here has been storytelling. And that has created a problem because it's not useful. All those things I told you, you say, that's great. Now what do I do? You need a much more systematic way to address this. So that's what we're going to talk about. But let me also say that storytelling does have a role in this. Because to teach entrepreneurship, the first thing you have to start with is the heart. If someone does not want to be an entrepreneur, you can't teach them anything, right? So I have 4 kids, and I wanted them to play basketball. And like I was saying with your own kids, they won't listen to you. So of course they didn't want to play basketball. So there's nothing I could do to teach them basketball. They just weren't going to have any of it. I could have taken them to the best schools. I could have done anything. They didn't want to. But it's even worse for entrepreneurship. Because if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, it's so hard to be an entrepreneur. You're hit with failure all the time. And you have to really want to do this. And if you don't, you're going to get knocked out of your game. So this idea of hearing stories about being an entrepreneur does have a benefit. It encourages the heart. It encourages the spirit to be an entrepreneur. And I hope people today will feel inspired to be an entrepreneur. But that's only part of the story. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to be different. If all the fish are swimming this way, well, are you willing to swim that way? Not only are you willing to, do you get excited about doing something different than everybody else? And that's how we, oh, you can't see it here, but it says it's more fun to be a pirate than to join the Navy. And this is a saying that Steve Jobs had, and we have it right here. By the way, I'm wearing the same shirt that was on that video, but I do have other shirts that I wear once in a while. And I haven't been wearing it since that that video was taken. But you'll see here, it says it's more fun to be a pirate than to join the Navy. And see, here's our logo. You see it right here? And all the old white people like me at MIT say, oh, that's a really nice logo. And all the students look at it and they see pirate flags. And that's important because we want them to be different. We want them to feel like they're the pirates taking on the established order. If any of you read Malcolm Gladwell, or I would encourage you to see the TED Talk, David and Goliath, why David can beat Goliath, and how exciting that is. So, well, we're not going to. So you need both the spirit and the skills. If we just give you the spirit to be an entrepreneur, it's like getting you excited to rush out into battle, and you rush out into battle, but you don't have the proper equipment and the proper training, then your spirit gets smashed and you're unsuccessful. So that's not what we're going to do. You start with the spirit, but then we have to give you skills. So how should entrepreneurship be taught? First of all, we need to have a common language to talk about it. This is very important. And everybody needs to contribute around the world. It needs to be taken as a serious profession, a serious body of knowledge. We can't just invent new words all the time, which often happens in entrepreneurship. Secondly, we need to take a systems approach to this. We can't just say there's one simple answer, or as I see every day with articles that are sent to me on the internet, the 3 key things that you need to know to be an entrepreneur. It's a complicated system where there's many things involved with it. The last thing is we need to think both in a practical way, and we need theory and practice. So if you want to be good at a sport, you know, even if you're LeBron James, you still have a coach. But you can't just be coached on something and watch instructional videos. You have to play. And then after you play, someone analyzes it and says, oh, here's how you can get better with the theory. So you go back and forth between theory and practice. So, and this is very, very important. And this is when you see medicine went forward, when they combined theory and practice together, and it was called translational research, and had connective tissue between them to make sure that it worked. So when we do entrepreneurship, when we sat back and said, how are we going to teach entrepreneurship, we need to do it with a toolbox approach. If we were building a house, we wouldn't just build it with one tool. We have a hammer, we have a screwdriver, we have a saw, we have a wrench. So you have many different tools to build a house. There's no one tool. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, we tend to try to look for that one single tool that will solve it. And by the way, if there's no established field, you see a lot of entrepreneurship experts out there selling their book to be able to do that. And that's not, by the way, that's not what I'm doing. I make almost nothing at all off the books. And everything I make, I put back into education. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, we're enraptured with the latest book that's come out. Right now, it's Lean Startup. Lean Startup. What is that based off? What data is there to show that this actually works? Are we just telling stories like we were talking about before, or is there data? Turns out there is some data from a guy named Stefan Tomke that showed that this stuff actually works. But it only works in a specific situation, just like a tool. So what we need to do is we need to build up a toolbox for entrepreneurship. We need to build up a toolbox of things that will help you address the different challenges you see in an entrepreneurial environment. So we're trying to build a toolbox. And so what we've done is we've gone out and gotten the best of everything that's out there. What we didn't do is try to recreate it all new. There's a bunch of things that already work. And we know that from analysis and experience. So one of the things is design thinking. Design thinking has worked in doing market analysis and ethnographic research. And we're going to use that in our process. And that's actually where we start. So the beginning of this process of the 24 steps, this blue section right here, is what can you do for your customers? And all this has been used before at places like Procter & Gamble. And in my companies, I figured out how to do that. And then we built back from the customer. And this is a fundamental premise that every entrepreneur should know. You can't try to force things out on customers. You might get really lucky, but it's not high odds at all. See, now you're going to see all the cool drawings you missed. I won't repeat it, but this means entrepreneurship is the cool thing. This is, we don't know. He's looking inside the brain. This is the different types of entrepreneurship. You've seen this. And this is the thing that I was mentioning before. All right? So by the way, we have some stickers here that we'll give out to people who ask good questions later. In creative irreverence. And this is, see, that's a little pirate ship that I was talking about with our logos. And this is important. I mean, you know, when I first did it, like, all the people at MIT were saying, oh, you can't do that. You know, pirates are bad people. And I said, you don't understand. You're taking yourself way too seriously. I mean, we need to create this kind of pirate mentality here. And very seriously, what I did when I first took over our center is I took down all the pictures of the old people. No offense here. I am one of you. I took down all the pictures of the old people in the center looking down at these young people who are trying to do innovative things. We took down all the pictures and we just put white walls from top to bottom so you could write on everything. And I always say, the more a place looks like a boardroom, the less innovative and entrepreneurial it's going to be. So this is the toolbox that I was talking about, where if you're going to build it, of course you would have a toolbox. Yet when we look at entrepreneurship, whatever the new book is, it becomes the fad, and everybody says all you need to know is just read this one book. And it's very captivating to think that that's true, but it's not. There's no one book that's going to give you all the answers. But there was a lot of incentive for people to write a book, because if you wrote a book like this, you could become a millionaire by doing that. You set up a consulting business and the like. And you have a buzzword with it, whether it's crossing the chasm, blue ocean, lean, pivoting, whatever. But that's because there was not this field of entrepreneurship that was taken seriously. It was susceptible to faddish, kind of intrusions. And so what we need to do is we need to have, these are real academics. I'm not a real academic. I'm what you call an accidental academic. I am a real entrepreneur. And so these are people that I work with who are very intelligent and go through and say, does this really make sense? Like when we're preparing for class, I'll say, here's what I'm going to do. And they'll say, Bill, do you have data that backs that up? And that frustrates the hell out of me, but it's very productive to say, you need to have rigor in what you teach. And that's very important. So here's what I was talking about. So if you take these things and you put them together with this being it, how do we give a rigorous roadmap to entrepreneurs? How do we give a rigorous roadmap to entrepreneurs? And this was the result of it. And a few things. First of all, people say, that looks like a game board. This isn't serious. And you're right, because we're trying to make a very easy to access user interface for some pretty complicated, hard stuff. And by the way, it's not just for people at MIT. People at MIT aren't the real problem here, although they can be a problem to me a lot. But the issue is, how do we get this information out to a broader group of people? Much broader than, a few hundred, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people a year. How do we get it out to millions of people? Because we talked about entrepreneurship is important. So we're trying to make it first accessible. And the second thing is it should be fun, because entrepreneurship can be very depressing because you're beaten down all the time. Things go wrong. So it's very important that when you're an entrepreneur, you don't take yourself too seriously and you have fun while you're doing it. This is the spirit. And we're going to talk about, how you do that even more so as we've learned. But getting back to the pedagogy here, the next thing is, well, if you want to make it fun, having 24 steps is too many steps. Can't you make it like 3? And the answer is no. It's hard. It's hard. And 24 is an approximation. We could make this 100 things, but 24 is, to me, the right number. It's enough to get rigor without overwhelming. Some people think it's overwhelming, but I think it's the right number. Good balance. And the next thing is say, if that's the case, can't you make it a straight line? Can't you make it just a straight line? The answer is no. It is not a straight line. It's very complicated iterations that are constantly going on here. You'll get to step 4, you have to go back here. It's like chutes and ladders, or what do you call it? Snakes and ladders? Snakes and ladders. Yeah. And there's a tremendous amount of iteration as you go through this winding journey to be an entrepreneur. So let's just go through this and look at it now. So if you've been an entrepreneur, and many in this room are entrepreneurs. How many of you are already entrepreneurs? A lot of you. So those who have, you're going to appreciate this. Some of my students go, this is obvious. But if you've been an entrepreneur, you've made these mistakes before. I can assure you. I made so many mistakes. And that's what, it was easy to write this book in one sense because the persona was me 20 years ago. What did I need to know 20 years ago that I know now that made me effective in the third company that I couldn't do in the first company? So the things you're going to see here are pulling together things that were out there already for the most part. So the first step is this design thinking. Who is your customer? And people say, don't you start with the product? And the answer is no, you don't. There's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek, who's not exactly an academic, but it's still a good TED Talk that says, don't start with the how and the what. Don't start with the what and the how. Start with the why. Why does someone need your product? But to understand the why someone needs your product, you have to understand who. Who is the product? So the who for a millennial in Boston is different than a 30-year-old person in Bangkok. So you need to understand who your customer is. Again, this is just good fundamental business. This is good fundamental business that you learn in design thinking, that if you went to Procter & Gamble, you would get trained on. It's proven to work. If you're at Honda, you build a persona for your car, and you know that persona inside and out. All we're doing here is breaking this down to say, what are the many different markets, market segmentation you could go after, get a bunch of stickies, put them up on the wall, think about all the potential markets, then you're going to figure out which is the one market we're going to go after. Because focus is critical, absolutely critical here, because you're a startup. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of resources, and you don't have a lot of time. So you have to figure out which singular market are you going to focus your efforts on to be successful and break through. Beachhead, this goes to military tactics. If I'm a smaller army than the one I'm trying to, if I'm the smaller attacking army, I focus my resources on one place and break through. And then once I figure out what the beachhead market is, then I build an end user profile and I start to define who my customer is. I do the demographics and I do the psychographics. By the way, I'm going to go fast here. And all this stuff is in the book. And then there's a new workbook coming out in March, which will give you worksheets to step you through all this. But this is building the demographics and psychographics of your customer. It's figuring out what are proxy products that they would buy so you can identify them when you see them. And also identify who is not your customer at the same time. Once I do that, then I figure out how big is my beachhead market. If my beachhead market is $2 billion per year, that's way too big. You need to make it smaller. If it's $100,000 a year, it's not big enough. So in this stage, you're figuring out how big is your market. In each one of these steps, you get into a lot of detail as to what it is and define the step very specifically, and there are examples in the book. And in step number 5, then we pick a specific persona, an actual real customer, one real customer that best represents it, and then we figure out, understand that person in even more depth. And why do we do that? Because when you have a singular persona, it makes all the discussions about, should we add this feature to the product? How should we price it? What should we message it? How should we distribute it? It makes it crystal clear. Because the final arbiter is the persona. It's not the person who best argues in the room. And again, this is stuff that's been proven before. Now, once we have that, we know a first pass at who our customer is. And now we get into what can we do for our customer. We do a full life cycle use case. We build a product brochure so that we can go out to, we don't build the product, we build a product brochure and we go out. And so everybody on the team will now agree on what the product is. And now we're going to get ready to go out and talk to the customer. But before we do, we need to figure out what's the value proposition, what's the problem we're solving, the problem they really care about most. And we tie this all back to the persona. We do this now because we now have a persona, and we work that. But then at step 9, we've only done it for one person. Now we should test it with 10 other real customers, and then we know that we have a good use case, product definition, and value proposition. Do we get this right at first? No. We're going to iterate numerous times through here. And by the way, when we get these next 10 customers, it's likely there's someone in there who's going to be a better persona, better, closer to the, a better representative for all the potential customers. But once we've done that, and this, by the way, in the class is a tremendous amount of fun, the hard part's going to start here in step 10. What is it that we uniquely do? What is it that we uniquely do that somebody else can't just copy? Can't just copy. I just came from Vietnam. And as soon as a business works there, they have 10 people who immediately copy it right next to them. What is it that you're going to do? What's your secret sauce that's going to make your product special? And there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that your core should get better over time. The more customers you get, the more products, your core should get better compared to other people. How do you do that? And then why does your customer care about your core? What value does your core create for your customer relative to your competitors? All this we step through. And then that's great. And now actually at this point, this was tough. And the people in the class say, oh, it's great. We're done with the class. And I say, no, you've only just begun. And they say, well, oh, that's right. We need to build the product now because we haven't done it. I say, no, we're not building anything yet, which frustrates engineers to no end. I say, now we have to understand how does our customer acquire the product? How does the customer acquire the product? They go, well, we just proved it's a good product. They should buy it. Let me just tell you, the best product doesn't always win. And the best product doesn't create any value unless the customer gets it and actually uses it. And you don't have a business until someone pays you for your product. So you have to figure out how do you get customers to pay you for the product. And to do that, there's a whole body of knowledge out there that's already usable for us. But we just need to streamline it and integrate it in now. And what that is step 12 is, what's the decision-making unit? Who's the end user? Who's the economic buyer? Who's the champion? Who influences it? Who has veto power? And we go through and define all those things in step 12 so we know who is making the decision. In step 13, we go through how they make the decision at that point. And this gets into nasty little things like, is it in the capital budget? Is it in the operating budget? What does it mean if it's in the capital budget? These are things that you really need to understand because they can kill a business. You can have a great product, and if the customer doesn't buy it, you have no business. You just have a great technological demo. So understanding who makes the product, how they make the decision, now clues you into a lot of really important things that we're going to use going forward. But this requires people to do something that's uncomfortable for them. They need to go out and talk to customers and do what we call primary market research to find out what the reality is, not what they think it is, not how they interpret it, but go verify that with customers. And they've been doing it up here, and this has been kind of fun. But down here, you have to figure out who's making the decision. And the skill of primary market research is very, very important. So once we've done that, then in these green steps here is, how do we make money off the product? How do we make money? So how do we make money is first we have to find out how do we extract value for the value we created. So if I create $1 million for someone, how much of that should I get? Should I get $1 million back? The answer is no. I'll probably get 20% of it back. So if I give them $1 million, then maybe I can get $200,000 back. But the question is, do I just get that money up front? Or do I get it in a subscription business? Or do I get it in a consumables business? There's a lot of different ways that you can get paid for your product. And if you understand the decision-making unit and decision-making process, this decision on the business model can be a game changer for you. When you look at things like consumables, these map extremely well to the medical marketplace. The consumables is, I'll give you the razor, but you have to buy the razor blades. Because I don't make any money if I give you the, then I can make on the razor blades. Do I do a rental model as opposed to a one-time charge? Do I do a per usage model? Do I do a subscription model? Do I do a free model supported by advertising? Do I do a free model where I collect data and then I can resell that data to somebody else? So this decision here turns out to be 15, turns out to be a really important decision that people don't spend enough time on often. And if with companies like Google, Google's breakthrough was AdWords. Once they figured out how they could get paid that was different than everybody before them, including Yahoo, Lycos, Ask Jeeves, that was the magical thing, turnaround for Google. They used AdWords. As opposed to getting money for banner ads, they auctioned off the words that you looked up. And if you look at other businesses like Salesforce.com, it was a per usage model when everybody else was doing a one-time charge. So each step we get into a lot of detail, and if I keep getting into this much detail, I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to go faster. But once you do that, that's a very important decision. You then estimate the pricing, and we talk about how you do that, and people usually spend way too much time on that decision. You're just going to estimate, get feedback from the customer, and you'll never know. Once we know 15 and 16, now we can estimate what the lifetime value is. That means how much profit a new customer will give us. How much profit will I get from one new customer? Once I know that number, an estimate of that, now I can start to say, if I make $100,000 when I get a new customer in profit, then that means I can sell to them directly. I can hire salespeople. If I get $1,000 in profit, I cannot hire salespeople. I have to go through telemarketing or some sort of automated systems with preference engines. And that's step 18. How can I now, once I know this, what are the sales channels available to me? Now in 19, this says, if once I know the sales channels, now I can calculate the cost of customer acquisition. And this is a bracing moment for most entrepreneurs, because they think it doesn't cost that much to sell their product. In fact, it will cost you much more than you know. And I'm not saying that because you're dumb. Every single time I've done this, I've underestimated how much it will cost to acquire a new customer. It's very expensive to hire salespeople, to do marketing and sales, to do all those things. It takes longer than you think to sell your product. So estimating this cost of customer acquisition often means that you're going to have to, it'll be too high, then you're going to have to figure out how do you bring that down to line up with your lifetime value. Because if your lifetime value isn't 3 times what your cost of customer acquisition is, you're in trouble. Because you got to have a profitable, sustainable business. And if this is 3 times this, then you can pay for the other parts of your business. You can pay for your research and development. You can pay for the real estate. You can pay for the administrative and legal costs. But if it's not, you're in trouble. And often this is where and you have to iterate a lot of times through here. Now, once I have that, then this next stage is, how do I build the product? And people say, wait, you didn't build the product up until now? And they say, that's right, because it's very expensive to build a product. It's very resource intensive. And there's another problem. As soon as we build products as engineers, we start advocating for the product. There's a very well-known behavioral economics bias called the IKEA bias. As soon as we build something, we start advocating for it and saying, this is a good product. You don't understand. You need this product. And So building it is costly. It ties us down. It takes us out of the mode that we should be in. And here there's a lot of steps that we'll take you through. How do you efficiently and effectively build a product? Kind of what Eric Ries is getting into in a lean startup. How do you do that using small experiments, as Stefan Tomke talked about before? And once you get that right, how do you scale the business? So all this is in the book, and we go through it. It's online classes. We have a new one coming out in December. This is a good, systematic way to go from idea or technology to a profitable, sustainable product. And this is usable not just if you want to make lots of money. It's also good for social entrepreneurship. Many of our companies do things like empowering women in Africa, bringing technology to the bottom of the pyramid in India, to reduce carbon footprints, to help people with serious medical conditions. It's a systematic, disciplined process. So, as I always start off our classes in the semester is, what's the single necessary and sufficient condition for a business? It's a paying customer. It's a paying customer. And all of this process is to get profitable paying customers over and over again so we can keep a business going. In this process, we are not dealing with abstracts. We're dealing with specificity. You cannot have a conceptual you can't have a conceptual startup. It's got to be very specific. Who exactly is the customer? What is exactly the use case? Because when I was at IBM, we could get abstract because we could make payroll every Friday for clear. In a startup, if we don't sell something, we're not making payroll. That could be a real problem. And you don't know the answer. You just get better and better and better over time. This is a lot of the stuff that's underlying it when you start looking at it. Why certain steps go before another. If you have the persona, you'll say, what's the number one priority? What keeps them awake at night? What's the thing they fear most in the world? And that ties to what's the value proposition based on. It's based on the thing that they care about most. And then when we think about how do we position ourselves relative to the customer, it's the thing they care about most and the thing they care second. Not what we think they care about, but what we have verified that they care about most. And then we map our product to that, and then we better be better than the competitors in this upper right-hand corner. And then our core needs to support that, and the resource plan fills in there. So this is I talked about systematic, and I don't mean to overwhelm you here, but there's a lot of logic that underlies that nice-looking, kind of chart. So to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be focused, and you have to move quickly. But to get that spiral that gets better and better over time, you can't just go fast with focus, because then you're like a dog chasing its tail, as Asmar said. You're just going around doing the same mistake over and over again. What you need to do is learn from each iteration and get better and better. And this is the area that you need to operate in. And that's why we have the iterations in the system. And every time there's an iteration, you're learning and you're getting better. All these slides, by the way, are available now on SlideShare. And I'll make available to you otherwise. And everything that we do is open sourced. Let me just say that we talked about how do you teach people entrepreneurship. We don't teach people just by reading a book. You have to pick a project. You have to get a team. You have to try that project. You have to fail and then go back and say, OK, how did that step work? How do we go forward from here? By the way, I don't like my team anymore. OK, it's divorce time. Let's split you up. But that's an important part of learning entrepreneurship. We cannot do it in the abstract. It's like sports again. You've got to get on the field and try it. Then we come off, and then we try it again. This just goes through the broader entrepreneurial education program, which says, first of all, you have to nucleate it. You have to come up with an idea. You have to build that initial team. And then we have to educate people. What is entrepreneurship about? And then once they do that, then you get into how do you come up with a product market fit. And this is really the 24 steps that I just went through. But then there's how do you do primary market research. And this will be a lot more detail. You'll see it on the videos, but a lot more detail in the book that's coming out in March. And then how do you come up with a strategy to scale that business in a competitive way? But then once you have a product, you don't really have the entire company. There's a whole bunch of other things that you need to do as well. Operations, you need to come up with legal things. And I didn't get into that here, but these are other elements of it that they'll help you with here, or mentors or centers will help you with. So what's the point what's the point of what we're doing here underlying? Yeah, there's all that stuff, but it's focus. Focus, focus, focus. Disciplined entrepreneurship is figuring out what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. As Steve Jobs said, I'm actually as proud of the things we have not done as the things I have done. It's the fact that he didn't put the floppy drive on the Mac. It's taking away things that are important in products, and it's equally important when you're doing a startup because you don't have a lot of resources. You can't waste them. Does it work? Yes, it works. Here's the book. There's the online classes, and this is the one you really wanted to see. It's the spirit of a pirate with the execution skills of a Navy SEAL. You can't just be a pirate, nor can you just be someone who understands all the skills. You have to have the heart, and you have to have the skills to be able to do it. Ironically, in our center, we talk about the 4 H's now. Not ironically. We've learned that we talk about, it starts with the heart. You have to want to be an entrepreneur. Once you want to be an entrepreneur, the next stage is head. We got to teach you what to do. You have to understand what to do. You kind of have to read this book, for instance. You have to learn other things. You have to know what to do in your head. You have to have the knowledge. But that's not enough. You have to have the hands, the third H. You have to be able to put it into practice. You have to have the capability to put that knowledge to use. And then the last one is home. This is the one that we didn't get at first. You have to be able to understand what to do, but then to be successful, we've seen entrepreneurship is so hard that you need to have a home of other people who are entrepreneurs, a community of people that will pick you up when you're down, that when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're saying, I'm fighting with my founder, I need to fire his brother or sister. Who do I speak to? You speak to someone else who's an entrepreneur. When you need to find that lawyer to help you, who can help you? Someone else who's part of the community. It's emotional support, it's contacts, it's capability. What do you do in a situation? So we've grown from this, what we talk about here, the spirit of a pirate and the execution skills of a Navy SEAL. So now what I want to do is I want to give you a real live example as to how entrepreneurship is taught. And so for that, I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to show you a video. So as it is, I have the greatest job in the world. I'm at MIT, and I run the Entrepreneurship Center. And people come to me all the time with crazy things. And so there was once this guy, Bill Evans, and this is about 2 years ago. He came, he said, Bill, I want you to meet these guys. They're in my fraternity at MIT, and they want you to help them raise money for their business. I said, great, bring them over. And so over came these 4 guys from his fraternity. One was Michael, who you're going to see, Michael Farid, who's from Egypt. And then one of the other ones is Kale, and they talk the most. And they basically came into my office, and they're all these super smart engineers from MIT. And they think they're very smart, too. They know they're very smart. So they come in, and I say, OK, what's your business? And they say, we're going to build a robot to cook food. So how many customers do you have? They said, we don't have any customers. I said, you clearly haven't taken my class. So I said, but I thought you were going to help us. I said, how do you want me to help you? And they said, we want you to give us some money. It's the same thing everywhere, right? And I said, why do you want me to give you money? He said, so we can build the robot because that's our business. I said, look, you don't have a business. So they started looking at me. I said, you realize you don't have a business. And they're like going, wait a second, what's going on here? And they said, look, old man, are you going to give us money or not? I said, look, here's the deal. Michael's the lead guy here, and you're going to see him in a second. He says, are you going to give us money? I said, here's the deal. I'll give you some money if you take a class on entrepreneurship, because I don't think you really know what you're doing and what you don't know right now. So I'll give you some money if you take a class. He laughs. Yeah, well, thank you, old man. How much are you going to give us? So I'll give you enough money to get it started. He said, all right, I'll take your silly class, and we'll just be done with this. So he took the class, and then he took another class, the team, and then they joined our summer accelerator for 3 months. By this point, they bought in. They bought in that there is a process like this that works, that they shouldn't just build their robot. They don't even know who their customer is at the beginning. But by the end, I'm going to show you now Michael Farid presenting his company called Spice, the robot that cooks food. And they learned so much in this process. Now, so first of all, the scene is the school year just starts. So they've been working on this all summer. And these are 4 engineers. And they want to show all their colleagues, the other students, the fantastic robot that they built to cook food, because this will blow everyone's mind. But I want you to notice for 2 minutes, they do not show the robot. They talk about who's the customer, what can you do for the customer, what's the use case, what's the business here. And I was so proud of this that I have to show it to you. But this is just one. And then, of course, they show the robot, and the crowd goes absolutely wild. But it's MIT, so bear with us.
The US is home to some of the biggest fast food brands in the world. It's almost ingrained in our culture. In fact, the term fast food was invented here. Big brands like McDonald's and Burger King have been around for over half a century, and not a whole lot has changed about them. Now, it took us a while to get there, but believe it or not, the US today is more health conscious than ever before. Fast food companies are being put under huge pressure to remove factory processed food from the menu and replace it with fresh ingredients instead. And it's not just about health consciousness. It's that we're starting to care more about where our food comes from. Fresh, organic, locally sourced, responsibly grown. These are all labels that customers care about these days. Sometime in the last 15 years, we started realizing that processed food is not okay anymore. And that's a big problem for fast food restaurants. See, the whole point of fast food is to get cheap food quickly. But when it's not processed, it's not that cheap anymore. In addition to that, fast food labor costs are equal to about 30% of revenue today, and that's expected to increase significantly in the next 10 years. So what does all this mean for fast food? Well, it's one of 2 things. Either cheaper, more processed ingredients, or higher meal prices. Fast casual restaurants, places like Chipotle, Panera, these are places that serve higher quality meals from fresh ingredients. But their average meal price is more than 35% higher than McDonald's. And the fact is, the most cost-effective options are the worst for you. And surveys have shown that customer satisfaction in fast food is at an all-time low. This is an industry that clearly has some problems. And with $0 spent in research and development in recent years at many of the big brands, it's safe to say there hasn't been a whole lot of innovation. Spice is here to change all that. We believe that fast food should be affordable, it should be convenient, but most importantly, it should be good for you. A busy mother shouldn't have to feel bad for feeding her children fast food for dinner. Spice is a new kind of fast food restaurant. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Spice Kitchen, the world's first completely automated restaurant. Inside the Spice Kitchen, we've developed technology that allows it to cook a wide variety of meals with absolutely no human involvement. We can cook stir fries, rice dishes, pasta dishes, and even some warm salads and desserts. The unit has an array of sensors to accurately control temperature and quantity so that your meal is cooked perfectly every single time. In the future, you'll be able to customize your meal by selecting different ingredients or sauces, and there is never a possibility for human error. The unit is also self-cleaning, as you can tell. Each pot goes through a quick wash cycle in between meals. You can think about it almost like a refrigerator a dishwasher, a stovetop, and a chef, all packed into one machine, the Spice Kitchen. So, how do you, the customer, interact with it? Use your smartphone to check out the menu for the day. Select what you want and hit order. Your meal is then cooked from fresh ingredients, and you'll get a notification a few minutes later when it's ready. You walk over to the machine, you scan a QR code, and boom, you've got your hot, fresh meal. We operate from a centralized industrial location where all the raw ingredients are carefully prepared. Our trucks then go around the city, servicing and restocking all the spice kitchens, getting them ready for the new day. This model allows us to be in places that normal restaurants can't be in. And because we're so much smaller than a normal restaurant, we can literally go anywhere with 20 square feet of space and a bunch of hungry customers. By bringing the restaurant closer to the customer, we're increasing convenience. And because we don't require on-site employees, we're open 24 hours a day. Spice kitchens would be perfect for apartment buildings, corporate office locations, shopping malls, train stations, and even street locations. But we are initially targeting universities. University students are going to love Spice because we're going to offer them hot, fresh meals when and where they can't currently get them. That includes remote campus locations, places like dorms or department buildings that don't currently have nearby food options. During late night hours when everywhere else is closed. And finally, to replace or complement existing grab-and-go locations. These are the types of meals that are currently available to students at these locations. And these are the types of meals that Spice can offer. We've already established relationships with Northeastern, BU, and Bentley, I think the representatives here today, who are all interested and excited to pilot our first Spice location. We're a team of passionate mechanical and electrical engineers, and together we are affectionately known as the Spice Boys. We have an amazing advisory board with experts in food technology, including Dick Sweeney, co-founder of Keurig, and David Howard, president of Unitherm Food Systems. We are dedicated to providing healthy, high-quality options because as college students, this is a problem that we face every day. I'd love to invite you guys all to check out our Spice Kitchen. It's right here. Actually, it's downstairs at the reception, so you can check it out after this. We're Spice. We're revolutionizing fast food. Thank you very much.
So, I can't tell you how proud I am. And there's a whole, I could go through all these. It's like telling you about my grandchildren, except I don't have grandchildren, but I'm not angry about it. But here's someone that came in with just an idea and they just wanted to build a robot. And we work with them and the whole process and we turn them into something that was much more than that. That was much, much more than that. Today they've raised over $2 million. One of their investors is Howard Schultz from Starbucks. They have other people, a Michelin chef on their team. They are increasing their line of sight, their ambition dramatically. And this is the challenge. In Thailand, you can start businesses. I think all of you have seen friends who've started business. The question is, how do you make it a great business? How do you make it something that can really scale? How do you make it an IDE? And that's the process that they went through. And there's nothing magical here. All of you can do it. You know, it's just a matter of believing that you can do it. I know we do like Obama, right? We like Obama? Yes. And he said, yes, we can. And that's the first thing here. That's the heart. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we can start a company, but we can start a great company. And when you go through this, you'll see all these students. We push them. Do something that's great. Don't settle for just mediocrity. And once you do that, then this process helps you to do that. And then you can learn how do you become an entrepreneur. And so that's why I'm so confident. And I can take you through all these other people and the ones we just finished. And it's not like, this one's pretty cool technology, but it's not something that hundreds of thousands of people around the world couldn't do this. They could do it, but they had the vision to do it. And you saw they had real customers, and they had a use case. And they went through what the value proposition is, what they were doing today, and what they could do later, and how they were going to make money, and the logistics. They got the whole package together. And I wrote this piece called The Most Overrated Thing in Entrepreneurship is the Original Idea, because the idea is the smallest thing. It's all about, do you figure out a customer to apply that to, and then take your idea and work your idea until it's better? Do you have a process to do that? And then do you have a great team to do it? And that's entrepreneurship. So with that, I could show you lots more videos, and we would all love it. And it would be lots of fun, but I think we should do questions. Can we do questions now? So questions. Yes. Did you have a question? We'll start with the young fellow right here in the front, and then we'll come to the back. All right?
Tell me about Theranos. They did everything like the same.
Theranos. Oh, so if you're going to be an entrepreneur, Theranos. Does everyone know who Theranos is? So it was someone who got out and had a big vision, but they weren't ethically honest about what was real and what was not real. And look, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to have great ambition, but you have to be honest. You know, and if you're not honest and admit what your faults are, you will not be a successful entrepreneur.
They didn't get the product.
Yeah.
They get the customer, they get everything ready.
Right.
They did not get to the product.
Right. Theranos did not get to a product, and they never admitted that they didn't have the product.
Yeah, that's a consequence.
Yeah. So look, I mean, there's this thing about entrepreneurs that they're so bold and they just do all this stuff. That's one of the myths of entrepreneurship, is most good entrepreneurs are very ethical and very honest. And they're much more humble than Steve Jobs. I mean, there's this, I could get on this whole thing about the damage that Mark Zuckerberg has done to entrepreneurship, because everybody thinks, well, entrepreneurship is all done by young people, and they just have an idea, and then it blows up like this, and you can be mean to other people. When you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly trying to get other people to work with you because you don't have enough resources. And if you're a jerk, nobody wants to work with you, right? And if you're unethical, nobody's going to work with you. So ethics are a very big part of this. And Theranos was not honest about what was going on. And they didn't get the technology to work. And there are people who you know, I'll have customers who don't get the technology to work right away, but they say, look, we're sorry. We know you have a problem, but we'll get it to work. You cannot lie to customers. That does not work. Okay, next one.
Please.
Yes. By the way, I think this is great. If I go to Japan and I say, are there any questions? Everybody looks down. And I came to Vietnam, and everybody has questions. And here in Thailand, everybody has questions. Yes?
There's one over there, yeah.
Okay, my name is Tiraya from UTCC. So,
Are you a student here?
Yeah, I just took a course here.
Good.
This course, IDE.
Oh, IDEA,
course.
yes.
Yeah, IDE. Okay, so thank you for sharing with us the steps and framework.
Yes.
I would like to know that you have been investing your time and also your financial budget on students and a lot of company. So what really inspired you to come up with this framework and all the time and everything for like all the students in school? And what is your expectation from all this time that you have invested in?
Great question. So two things. First of all, when I had to run, so they asked me to run the center at MIT for entrepreneurship, and so I had to run the class. Like if I just had to come in and give one lecture, it was easy. Like I came in and said, oh yeah, and I ran out of the class afterwards. But when I started to run the class, to be a good educator, you have to say, where are they at the beginning, and have I developed skills by the end? And this is when I had to think through, how do you do this? And I realized there was no good kind of curriculum out there that I liked to do it. And I was pulling from here, this book, and this book, and this book, and putting it together. I said, this is crazy. And so I built this reader. And that reader basically was, what did I wish when I was a student when I was at MIT? So I went to MIT in 93, 94. After I'd worked for IBM for 11 years, I went to MIT. And then I started my first company. And I had 4 kids, and I had a wife who was not making money. She was taking care of the kids. And I started this company called Cambridge Decision Dynamics. And I spent almost 2 years just knocking my head against the wall, like making mistake after mistake after mistake. And that was really, really painful. And so I said, that was crazy, what I did there. Why didn't somebody teach that to me when I was at MIT? And so I was my own persona. I said, what did I need to know? And now I'm going to teach the students to do that. And so I love doing it. It's great. I did 3 companies, and that is a lot. No, so I'm going to be like 60 next. I'm going to be 60 next year. And so this is something that I am very passionate about, and I love to see it, because if when I go to the big basketball court in the sky or under the ground, if entrepreneurship is seen as a noble profession, I will be so happy. That is like such a great thing, because it hasn't been. And even if it just moves a little bit in that direction, I will be so happy. Thank you. It's hard to understand what old people are like, but this is what they think about. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much for the information you are sharing today.
Yeah.
My name is Thiranut Pusaksikit from UTCC. I'm a marketing lecturer. I have one question to ask about 24 steps. Do entrepreneurs have to follow all the steps? Can they skip some? Why or why not? Thank you.
So I get this all the time. I get this question a lot. So look, I do case studies. I do Dollar Shave Club, and I do some other ones. And I show people who skip a step and what trouble they get into. And there's an old saying, you know, the man who takes the shortcut often ends up taking the longest way possible, right? The man who tries to save a little money ends up paying more in the end. This is not easy. This is not easy. But if you do this, and it might take you 2 months, but it'll save you years on the back end of doing dumb things. So if you skip a step, it's at your risk. Now, there's some businesses where you can skip a step. And there's some steps, by the way, if I go back to this, there's some steps that really need to be refined based on your business. Now, if you're a marketing professor, right? So there's some steps that if you're doing a B2C, sorry, let me just get this up here. If you're doing a business to consumer, if I'm doing a B2C, some of these steps get very short. So if I'm selling a phone, if I'm buying a phone, so this is a phone. He is the end user. He is likely the economic buyer, and he is likely the champion. But not necessarily, because his business may pay for this. So he's the user, and his business may be the economic buyer. So, but if it's a B2C, sometimes these things get compressed, and they get to be much shorter steps. So I've gone through this numerous times, and each step has a very clear purpose. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in there. And so you're asking me, I think you should do all 24. Some of them might be short, but you should think about every single one. That's not the answer you wanted to hear, is it? Well, entrepreneurship isn't easy. Just to be clear, all of you who haven't tried it, it's not easy. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And no one can tell you how hard it is. But also, no one can tell you how rewarding it will be. I'll go back to the analogy of kids. You know, no one can ever tell you how much work it is to have a kid. It's just so much work. It's so depressing. Your friends are going out, they're having fun, and you're staying at home wiping the bottom of a little human being. And if you knew how much work it was, you might never be able to do it. But the other flip side is having a kid is the most rewarding thing you could ever do in your life, and so it's worth all the effort. And that's what entrepreneurship is like. Remember the story I was telling you about IBM? I am so glad that I went through that and became an entrepreneur. It's a story, I tell my students, it's a story of getting out of the greenhouse. Because if you live in a greenhouse, every day you get up and no rain gets in, and the temperature's nice, and it's warm, and the humidity's fine, and nothing gets into the greenhouse that's too dangerous. So why would you ever leave the greenhouse? But you have to leave the greenhouse. And you say, why would I ever leave the greenhouse? Because every day I get up and say, why would I leave the greenhouse? Because someday there's going to be a hurricane, and it's going to knock the greenhouse out. And then will you be able to live outside of the greenhouse? And so getting out of the greenhouse and getting out of your comfort zone is very important. Yes, sir.
Hi. Based on your experience, which step are the most people got stuck between like number 1 and 24? And the second question is, assume that there are 100 people at the beginning. How many people would manage to get to number 24? And after that, how many people manage to survive to have a successful business following this approach?
Yeah. Okay. So your first question was, which step is, what's it?
Which step is the hardest? I mean, in terms of people, most people get struck.
Yeah, usually this is the hardest, but what's your core? What is it you do unique? And this is very, very important for Thailand, because I think in Thailand you have an excellent culture. People know how to get going, but they don't build a special core that then they can ship it to someplace else and someone else couldn't copy the product. So this step right here is very, very important. And you'll see there's a bunch in the book, and there'll be a lot more in the one coming out in March. And we'll be doing more videos on that. The second one is, how many people start here and how many people come out there? So we start with like 2,000 people at MIT, and probably we'll have 300 might come out here at the end. Not because they don't, they come out the end to be able to have a viable idea. Now, of the 2,000 that go in here, I would say all of them learned a lot. And some of them might never start a company. They might go work at a family business, a bigger company, but they're so much more knowledgeable about what business is. See, when I went through business school, I took courses in marketing, I took courses in economics, I took courses in finance, but nothing pulled it all together like the entrepreneurship class. And that was really very helpful for me. Next question, yes, sir, in the back. You want to just yell?
Honesty and all that, and okay, it's an idealistic thing, but if you ever work with Chinese company who is very successful, honesty is pretty much the bottom line of how successful they are.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say honesty is not a good thing, but I'm questioning if the approach will work with Southeast Asia, not just Thailand.
Yeah. So first of all, this has worked very well with my students who are from Asia and then going back to Asia. I have one now who's just sold 1 million units in China using this. All right. Let me just tell you, first of all, the most important thing here for a startup is building a team. You have to build a team. So if your teammates don't trust you, if your team doesn't trust you, I don't know how you can be successful. All right? That's the first part of it. I don't understand how you can be successful. Oh, you get good questions. So those who ask questions, here. Pass this back for his good question. So I think, first of all, you have to have a very strong team, right? Because if I can't trust what the person on the right is doing and the person on the left, and I'm always checking out what they're doing, you're not going to be a successful team. So first of all, the trust has to start inside your team. And if your customers don't trust you, I don't understand how they're going to be good customers for you. Because you can't have a long-term relationship. Going back to LTV, I don't understand that. Now, if you're talking about intellectual property and protecting that, that's based on the strength of your core right here. So I don't really know how to answer. I do know that entrepreneurship is different around the world. That I know very clearly. Entrepreneurship is different in Asia. It's different in Japan and Korea than it is in China. And it's different here than it is in either of those places as well. So I don't know. By the way, it's different in the Middle East as well. Yes, I'm going to try to get other questions. Yes. Wherever you want. Who asked the other questions? Yes. Oh, wait, did you ask a question?
Sorry.
Yes.
My name is Angsuthorn Sisuchisat. I'm a lecturer at the UTCC.
Great. What do you teach?
I teach management.
Great.
Okay. According to what I learned before, I think the success rate for like startup business in the U.S. is pretty high, or for sure higher than in Thailand. And for us in Thailand, the startup survival rate is pretty challenging. So what is your suggestion for Thai startup to increase the survival rate?
Yeah.
And the second question actually. The failing rate is pretty high. So how could you teach entrepreneur to cope up with that failure?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. So look, failure is part of the entrepreneurial process. My first company, as I said, failed. Was that a failure in long term? No. That was actually very important. And it was good that it failed relatively quickly. It failed in 2 years. Because everything I learned, success is not a good teacher. Failure can be a very good teacher. It can be. It isn't always. So we talked about this at lunch. If I have a company, I want to have a company that goes like this. I want to have a company that's an IDE that's successful, right? If I have a company that just kind of goes like this that's not very successful, just barely bumps along, that's a very dangerous business, especially for young people here. If you're in a business that's not doing really well, but that's very dangerous because you're not necessarily learning more. Try to either make it go like this or make it fail, and then come back around and try again. And that's when you've learned a lot. If you can do that loop right there, failure and start over again, then your odds of success are much higher the next time around. So we encourage people to do that. That's why we have an accelerator program. I showed you Michael Farid. There were other companies in that 3-month period that failed, and then they had to start over again. But let me also say is that going through this, if you do good primary market research, you know what your customer wants, and you've basically qualified them and gotten pre-orders for it, your odds of success are going to be much, much higher. And the problem then often is they can't get the unit economics to work. But even when you fail with the startup, you're learning what you need to know for the next go-round. And you have to think of this as a multi-step dance, so to speak. It's a longer-term game. It's not just one. It's what you learn.
Okay,
Yes.
now we would like to have the last question from the floor, please.
Yes. By the way, can you pass out these to the people who ask questions? Yes.
My name is Nataporn. I am a serial entrepreneur, which is not my ideal. I want to have just one and jackpot.
Yes.
But it's not there yet. So
What types of businesses have you been doing?
My first one, it was a startup 10 years ago. It was in agriculture business.
Yes.
I got funded from Canadian investor, and I brought it and started in Thailand. So my question is, what is the thin line between this is time to stop and you have to push more and go forward, more dedication?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah. So this is one of the big questions that we have all the time: is when do you persevere, and when do you pivot, or when do you just hit the complete reset? Here's the first lesson I would tell you that I've learned is it comes down to the team. If you have a good team, pivot and try something new. If you don't think your team is great, then kill it and get a good team. Because if you have a great team, you can change the idea. The idea is easy to change. but you can't change your team. You don't even know whether the idea was good if you don't have a good team because you couldn't really execute against it. So the comfort level with your team is the most important thing. And by the way, implicit to that answer is entrepreneurship is not an individual sport. It's a team sport. And we talk about this all the time. It's a team sport. And the research shows that the odds of being successful increase with the number of people you have on your team. 2 is much more likely to be successful than 1, 3 than 2. And you have to have a team that has a common vision, has shared values. That means they can trust each other. To our friend here, that means they can trust each other. And then the last thing is they have complementary skills. Because a lot of times, tall people like to hire tall people. Short people like to hire short people. Business people, salespeople like to hire salespeople. But you can't do that. You have to have complementary skills. You have to have, we call a hacker, someone who likes to build the stuff. You have to have a hustler, someone who gets out there and likes to sell the stuff and do the business side of it. And then you have to have a hipster, someone who's very interested in what the customer experience is and how to make that work just right. And you have to have this kind of skill set on your team. So, but ultimately, if you have a great team and the unit economics aren't working and the dogs aren't eating the dog food, you need to take your team, you need to retrench, and you need to find a new opportunity. Because you're young. And you probably learned everything you're going to out of that situation. If it's in kind of this kind of living dead state, kill it and move on to the next one.
And the really final question from the Governor Prasan.
Ah, yes. Wait, I've got a special gift for him for his question.
I'm not sure whether it will be really special. There seems to be this phenomenon of preference to be engaged in startups, doing business of their own. Are this the same thing when we talk about entrepreneurship and the people who are in favor of having startups and so on? And from your point of view, do you see this as a more short-term phenomenon, or it's more something that will persist going on? And related to a more broader question, whether you care to share with us the current thought of business educators in the U.S. What is the current thought now? Particularly those who are involved in organizing business programs and so on. Whether this MBA program still something very worthwhile, how they adjust to the present phenomenon.
Yeah. So for those of you who are interested in this, there's a whole presentation I put up on SlideShare. It's called The Past, Present, and Future of Entrepreneurship Education. And I get into a lot of details on this. What is going on with entrepreneurship education? A lot of it's in there. But I just want to say is that people often think that as an entrepreneur, what are we training? We're training people to do startups. And that's not true. We're not training people just to do startups. Our customer at MIT, when I look at my classes, we have 4 personas, 4 basic personas. The ready-to-go entrepreneur like Chris Nolte is someone who wants to do a startup. That's the one that everybody talks about. This represents about 20% of the people in my class. It's not the biggest proportion of people at all. The biggest proportion of people who take our class are this. I'm curious about entrepreneurship. I'm curious about what entrepreneurship is. And this is important to understand because we're an educational institution and we should be teaching these people what is entrepreneurship so they can make an educated decision going forward. We, like you, we're not a public company. We're not a for-profit. We're an educational institution. And we should be teaching these people what entrepreneurship is so they can make a reasoned choice. And then they might turn out to be like Chris Nolte. But they also might turn out to be like Esteban Lubinsky. Esteban Lubinsky is from Quito, Ecuador, and he has a family business. And he is not going to do a startup. What he's going to do is he is going to take his family business and he wants to take it to the next level. And so what he wants to do, to be able to do that, is he wants to know what this entrepreneurship thing is, really understand it, and then he wants to create other entrepreneurs within his own organization and be more entrepreneurial himself and work with entrepreneurs who are in startup organizations. And this represents about 15% of our students, who we consider our customers. And by the way, Lucia Cam is someone who wants to be an entrepreneur inside a larger organization. She came from Procter & Gamble, and she saw that her company couldn't compete. So you see, Esteban Lubinsky wants to understand these people and hire people like this. She wants to do this as well because it fits her personal needs. She also might want to do it for other reasons. She might want to do it for an NGO. She might want to do it inside the government. She might want to do it elsewhere. So this represents about 15% of our students. And if you're talking about Asia, you're talking about Japan, this is a very big portion of what they want. And this is a very legitimate. But the skill set that all these people need, going back to this is what it would look like for they would start here and they'd be interested in these boxes and a little of this. But once they make their decision, as Devin did here, Devin decided that after she did that, she wanted to be an entrepreneurship amplifier. And she is working with the state of Maine in the United States now to help to promote entrepreneurship in the state of Maine. And we need these people. We need all these different types of people. It's not just this person. As I was giving this talk once, and I said about, we teach people how to fish. We don't catch a fish. My measurement is not how many companies do my students start. They start a lot of them, but that's not what I want to measure myself on. I want to measure, did I teach them how to start companies? Did I teach them how to fish? And I told that story once, and someone from Kenya said, Bill, that's very good. But once someone came and taught us how to fish in Kenya, and we fished the entire lake, and there were no fish left. And he said, you should be praising the entrepreneurship amplifier because you have to teach people how to fish in a sustainable way. So it's not only do we need this person to start companies, but we need other people to help build the ecosystem. We need people to revitalize big companies and to work inside big companies. And as educators, even if these people decide not to become entrepreneurs, I guarantee you they have a skill set, even if they go to be a lawyer, a doctor, or something else, that is going to help them the rest of their life. And that's what we're looking at. So going back to your point about what's the trends in the United States, entrepreneurship is absolutely huge. It's huge right now. So just at MIT Sloan, applications are up almost 40%. And it's not because all of a sudden we got new marketing department. It's entrepreneurship, this innovation-driven market is huge, and everybody knows it. They're building entrepreneurship centers like ours, and that's great. But there's a challenge here because entrepreneurship can't be taught just like any other class. It's different. It's very action-oriented and project-oriented. And when students want it, sorry, let me just, oops, I'm going the wrong way. When students look at it, these are our customers, we have to be able to give them these different types of offerings depending on who they are. They can pick and choose. Whether they're curious, whether they're corporate, whether they're ready to go, they're going to want different things. But they're not going to want the traditional residential class. Come sit in the class and listen to me speak, and then you take a test at the end. There will be some of the residential class, but then there's online classes. Then they'll also want workshops and lecture series. They want co-curricular things like hackathons and competitions. They also want to have resources pages they can go to, and they want advisory networks to help them. And this is not the way the traditional school has worked. The traditional school has worked, here's a residential class. And let me just give you another example of that, is that my cousin-in-law teaches at Harvard Law School. And if you came into Harvard Law School, there's a few things. First of all, credentials are very valued for most things. In entrepreneurship, nobody cares what your credentials are. If you have an MBA, that's okay. Maybe you can overcome that problem. You're a high school dropout? I'm very excited. I'm very excited. Hungry, as we say, hungry dogs hunt best. But so this world of relying on credentials is not there. But if I'm at Harvard Law School and you came in and said, I want a class on torts, I would pick up the thing, I go, okay, there's a class, let me see, there's a class next June in torts, June 2017. You say, oh, thank you very much, Bill. I'll take the class next June in torts. And you say, Bill was very good. He gave me advice. If you're an entrepreneur and you come in and say, and this happened just last week, I need a class in intellectual property. I need you to teach me how to handle intellectual property in an entrepreneurial environment. If I said, very good, let me look, oh, look at this, there's a class in intellectual property next June. You can take a class, they'd say, are you crazy? Are you crazy? I need to know now. I need to know now. If you're not going to tell me I'm dropping out of school, I'm going to go to Y Combinator, I'm going to go to Techstars, I'm going to go to General Assembly. I don't need this. I'm paying a lot of money to go to school here. I need it now. I need just-in-time stuff. I don't care about the credential. At Harvard Law School, you need to stay for 3 years and you can get a credential and then you can make lots of money. They need to know now what they want. They need to have that skill set. So we need to not just do residential. We need to have a plethora of options. Think of this as delivery mechanisms if you're giving a product, which is exactly how we think about it. And this is changing. And so it's changing rapidly to do this. So it's very action-oriented, multiple delivery channels, not depending on the credential, and getting out there and getting international, by the way. Big thing, international markets.
And our really last question. But keep it short for the question and answer. So the last question from CEO of the Black Canyon Coffee, Kun Pravit ka.
Yes, where is he? Yes, all right. The best coffee in Thailand. I'll try to give a short answer too, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. I'm not the student of the idea, but my daughter, she was. But sorry, she was not in the classroom today. I don't have the question. I'm the senior citizen right now. I nearly retired. I used to be the IT guys like you, but now I turned into the bean entrepreneur. So I sell the coffee. And our story has been written or chosen by Dr. Philip Kotler to be his case study 10 years ago. When I watched your video about that damn spice robotic kitchen, I would like to ask the question, are they still in the operation or not?
Yes.
And I understand that it's now being using at the Cambridge Institute, right?
It's being used?
Yeah. Now they're still using it, right?
They're using it in Greentown. So first of all, congratulations on your business. You're a real entrepreneur, and our hat's off to you. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
It wasn't easy, was it?
If I want to acquire that machine.
He's very focused. You see that?
How can I go ahead with that project? I would like to use it at the UTCC as the laboratory lab. Can I do that? I want to invest.
Yeah, I can put you in touch with them. They're absolutely our students. While we don't, I just did the survey the other day. To your point about how many are successful, 70% of the students are still going with the project team that they had. Of the other people, some of them restarted, and they're more successful in doing something else now. So yes, they're still going. They are in the investment phase. They just got $2 million. They're now building it out. And there's a whole bunch of regulatory considerations that we have. Maybe you don't have so many regulatory considerations here. Maybe? Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. And let me just say this. Those guys are having so much fun. They are having so much fun. I see them all the time, and their friends took jobs at Goldman Sachs and these other places. Their friends are making more money. they are not having more fun. I guarantee you that. And by the way, in the long term, these people are going to do great. They might make lots of money. They're going to make more than enough money no matter what they do. If this thing doesn't work, they'll find something else to do. They are now infected with the virus, the entrepreneurial virus. He doesn't care. He just wants one of these damn machines. So, well, look, thank you all for coming. I'll stick around and sign any books that you have. And hopefully this has been helpful to you. You've got a great, great time to be an entrepreneur, and you're in a great place. Thank you, Sawani.
Thank you very much, sir. Truly, thank you for your inspiring talk. And with this, we would like to present a gift for you from our President, Associate Professor Dr. Sawani Thairungrod. The gift is our beautiful elephant mug.
Elephant. Oh, yes, yes. Oh. Should move this down?
Before I give this to you, I don't know how to thank you enough. Not only you inspired me 2 years ago that entrepreneurship can be taught, but today people in this room can start to believe that entrepreneurship can be taught. Thank you so much. You inspire them also.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
And also another gift actually from Black Canyon.
Ah, coffee.
And to keep our event to the end, actually would like to record some good memory from today through the pictures. Therefore, I would like to invite our UTCC University Council